When you're hunting with a bow and arrow, you need to make sure you have incredibly good aim because there's nothing connected to your bow. Started with a hogfish in front of me, and when I took the shot, instantly a pretty large reef shark came into the area. Every time the hogfish shakes, it's giving out little vibrations to the shark, saying that there's an easy meal in the area. When this happens, it'll fire up the shark, and it's important that you keep eyes on it at all times. If at any point you start to swim away from the shark, it's gonna identify you as a prey item and start to pursue you as the meal. We got the hogfish off the end of my spear and started swimming in a different direction while keeping a close eye on it and our spears pointed towards the shark. We lost it, and I came across a mangrove snapper above some live coral. I hit him, but it wasn't enough to penetrate through the other side of his body, so at this point I need to hunt him down. Luckily, my first shot was a good one, and I found him hiding underneath this little bit of coral at the bottom of the ocean. He wasn't really swimming anywhere, he was bleeding out, so it was a pretty easy shot, and at this point I'm scanning the area, making sure no sharks are coming in to steal my food. Mangrove snappers here have to be 10 inches, and I always use my hands as a nice reference point to understand how big the fish is. As I was measuring it, the shark came right into point of view one more time. As I swam back to the boat, I held my arrow above the water so that it wouldn't be letting out a bunch of fish scent and attracting other predators nearby. It was tough though because there were sharks in between me and the boat, and the only way out is through. So eventually I put it back in and I got back to hunting. A Barjack was in the middle of the water column. Usually you'll find these guys in the open ocean. I took a nice shot, and because this is a smaller fish, it wasn't able to swim with my arrow for very long, so it kind of just sunk to the bottom of the ocean like an airplane would if it were going down. This is always the most dangerous situation. If a shark is gonna come and surprise you out of nowhere, now is the time. So as I descend, I'm looking all over the place, making sure that nothing's coming up on me. We wound up making chum out of it, which is a debatable whether it's actually smart with so many sharks in the area, but it was the decision that we made. The chum brought in a couple of Barracuda, and you guys know I'm always enjoying hunting those, but below the Barracuda was a mangrove snapper. These are the most abundant fish on the reef. He's under this cave, and when I take the shot, he's freaking out, sending signals to the sharks all around us, so we need to make sure we secure it fast. This mangrove was about a foot long, and the chum was definitely working from the jack earlier because it was bringing in a whole lot of them. It's important whenever you're lining up on a fish to really take your time, and sometimes you even need to lead your arrow. I hit another mangrove snapper, but it got off the end of my spear tip, and it must have been bleeding a whole lot because then the sharks started to come in real close. There's a reef shark in the area. 3-4 feet, manageable and not fired up. As I was looking for the mangrove that I lost, I came across a light blue parrotfish. These guys are super good for the reef. They actually poop sand, so most of the sand that you see created in earth are from parrotfish. In Hawaii they eat these, but here in Florida they're protected, so you usually just let them be. You could eat them in various parts of the world, and they are pretty good. I've had them before, but they're just such a sweet little fish. You don't really want to bother them too much. This ledge just kept on providing, and I couldn't help but continue to come back to it, especially because it was so beautiful and overgrown. Like the coral just looked almost like it was out of the movie Avatar. Really taking my time as I go around this coral head because you never know what's going to be around a crack or in a crevice. Sometimes you'll find a lobster. Other times a fish will be in a corner that you just never saw coming. But in my exploration, I found another Barracuda. I want you to take note of the size of this one. It's really not that long, maybe 2.5 feet. So I expected if I were to hit it for it to just sink to the bottom like an airplane, which is not what happened at all. My buddy had to go get my arrow for me because I was out of breath from chasing him. So I returned back to the same ledge that I was providing, and I found another mangrove kind of just hanging out. One thing I could have done better here is that there's so much live coral all over the place that I really should have waited for the fish to be a little bit farther away from it rather than shoot into the live coral. It's really easy when you're in the moment and you see something and you kind of just want to take the shot, but being patient is equally as important. I must have not pulled my arrow back enough because he got off the end of my spear, but I hit him in a point where he was bleeding out pretty heavy. So when I went to the bottom, he was kind of just laying there, and it was an easy shot to take. He wasn't going anywhere. I have a habit whenever I shoot a fish, I'll usually start to bleed and gut it immediately, and this will make for a better quality fish. The gills are kind of like the lungs of any fish, and that's where a lot of their blood is going to be stored, so I kind of just started to rip them out, and it brought in another really big shark. This one was an aggressive reef shark, and rather than stay in the area, my buddy and I decided to go on the boat just because it was so sharky. We didn't want to accidentally keep our eyes on one of them, and then another one comes up behind us, and before we know it, we're getting bit. The next spot we went to was on the same reef, just a little bit farther further down, hopefully to throw off the trail of the sharks, and there were a bunch of big-eyed toro in this area. Big-eyed toro are a bright red fish, and they have really big bulging eyes, and the reason behind this is because they usually hunt at night. They're primarily nocturnal. For that reason, they can't really see very well during the day. I imagine what they see is kind of like if a flashlight were shined in your eyes 24/7. It's just they can't see anything. Hit a good shot on one of them, and he's kind of tweaking out. You can see I cut the bottom of his neck and into his gill area, so before I know it, this guy's gonna bleed out and bring in more sharks. I was like, oh my god. So I decided to go up. Rather than chase down the fish and cause a bunch of commotion on the reef, there was a batch that wasn't really too afraid of me right under this ledge, so I just speared the next one. Whenever you're pursuing a fish that's on the end of an arrow, like I mentioned, you always have to do checks for sharks, especially when you're in an area where you know they're present. Reef sharks are real deal right here.
They're beautiful, man. Right, bro? This looks delicious.
At the time we were hunting them, my dive buddy and I had never tasted a big eye red toro, but after having them, I could confirm that the meat is very different than most other fish. They've got a super firm white meat to them, and it's almost kind of like a chicken fillet, which it's not as soft as some of the other snappers or things that you'll get out of the ocean. Their brains are also at the top of their heads, so it's really easy to put them out once you get them. And right here we have a reef shark kind of coming in close, I guess catching all of these fish. He finally started to smell the blood in the water. Most of the time, a shark will only start competing with you if they see the fish on the end of your line or arrow is not under control, but if you have it in your hands, for the most part, they'll just glance and then look away. The reason for that is because in the wild, sharks generally won't attack each other unless they have a really big size advantage on them. When you think about how large we are in the water, naturally, I'm 5'6", but then take the fins that are on me, and that adds another, like, foot or so. I wind up being about 7 feet in the water with all of my equipment. Shark doesn't want to get into a fight. They're looking for easy meals, so they're really just looking to steal something. Anytime you look at them, they'll just swim away. Nonetheless, we wound up getting out of that area just in case there was a shark that we didn't see, and we came to an area that had a pretty big wreck on it. That's what all this sheet metal is, and you see there are a bunch of mangrove snappers. I take a shot at this one, but I hit him a little bit high on his back. This wasn't good because it wasn't a fatal shot, so I knew I was gonna have to chase this fish, but I ran out of breath, so I went to the top, gathered it. A lot of the times a mangrove snapper, once you hit them, will go hole up somewhere, and by hole up I mean just find a crevice somewhere where they feel protected. In this instance, he went to the top of this sheet metal and deep inside of it too, so it was kind of a hard shot to take, and I was aiming for so long that I kind of, sometimes when I'm aiming, I totally forget that I have to take a break for oxygen, and I missed him and had to leave my arrow down there because I couldn't breathe.
I almost just died.
I take a drop down, and the first thing I see is a pretty large Goliath grouper, but they actually get 6 to 7 times bigger than this. As much as I want to eat a large grouper, these guys are protected where I'm at, but it means that there are big fish in the area that we will be able to hunt. When I came up from my drop, my buddy and I locked on to this 4-foot Barracuda, and shooting at these is pretty much guaranteeing to lose your arrow unless you stone it the first shot you hit. A stone shot means that right when you put the arrow into it, the fish passes away, which you can see that did not happen. This thing started running. I wound up having to chase this thing with an arrow into it. The good news is that the arrow is pretty heavy, which means it was weighing the fish down. It wasn't as fast as it normally would be, but I was also scared because this thing has really sharp teeth and can turn at me on any moment. Unfortunately, this was the last time I saw that arrow. The fish wound up getting away with the arrow in him, and more than likely a shark is going to wind up eating him by the end of the day. I got a new arrow, and below that Barracuda was a decent sized Barjack, and these guys are really good sushi, so when I put one into him, this is not a fish that could carry the arrow for miles. I was able to recover him pretty easily, which was good because it gave me a boost of confidence for hunting bigger game. We moved to a little bit deeper of a spot that was 45 feet deep. I took the trek down there, and it's important that whenever you're doing a deep dive, you really calm your mind. So much of diving is mental, and I wind up checking under this ledge very slowly. This calm demeanor is keeping my heart rate low and making it so that I can really take time when I aim at this lionfish that I see. A pretty funny behavior that the lionfish displays is that they'll usually pick a ledge and be upside down under it. It's really only peculiar to the lionfish. It's also important to note that lionfish are extremely venomous. All of those spines that are sticking out from it, if they stick you, can send you in the hospital or swell any part of your body up massively. I personally go into anaphylactic shock, so I always have my dive buddy kill these things. He's putting a knife about a 1/4 inch into his brain. That's the lucky part about lionfish. Their brains are very close to the high part of their head. The most beautiful fish on the reef, if you ask me, and they really do taste delicious. Hunting that lionfish must have brought in some other predatory fish, because before I knew it, we were surrounded by barracuda. I took aim on this one, and another one came up from the bottom that I didn't even see. It kind of just came into my line of sight, so I took the shot. My arrow dropped out of it, but I was paying attention to where it was swimming, and I wanted to hunt it down. I still had barracuda on my mind. Whenever a fish has discoloration in any part of its body, it means that you hit nerve damage, which is a good sign because it's going to be slower than usual. I take aim to hopefully secure this fish. It got away, but that really motivated me to catch something massive. The first spot we hit was a shipwreck, and most shipwrecks are covered with barracudas, but this one takes it to a whole different level. There must have been 500 in about a 200-yard radius. They can be pretty intimidating, and while I was hunting some mangroves on top of the shipwreck, every once in a while one would come into my point of view, and it was just such a large fish that it would scare me pretty bad because I would think it's a shark. Finally, I got over my fear of the barracudas, and I started to aim on what looked like lunch, and I actually hit the snapper, and it did get off the end of my spear tip, but I could tell that I broke its spine pretty good, which means it's only a matter of time before either I catch one or the barracuda tries to take it from me. We move to a little bit more shallow of an area. I see a really nice sized hogfish, and I aim at it just waiting for it to turn broadside to me, and broadside means that I get more surface area when I hit it. We were able to recover it, and it was quite a stud. It came in at like 19 inches. These are French angelfish right here, and you're not allowed to shoot them, but they're so pretty and curious. They always come up to you as if you're family. The French angelfish took me to a rock where there was a fish holed up in there, and whenever you're aiming into a rock, you don't want to put too much pressure on the end of your spear tip, because if you do and you miss the fish, it'll wind up hitting the rock really hard, and A, you could kill a live coral, but B, you could also dull your spear tip. My dive buddy pointed out a nice fish under this rock, and he was using a flashlight. If he didn't point it out, I would have never known that anything was in there. It was a nice red grouper. Not a lot of people know that red grouper are one of the best fish to eat in Florida. This one came in at about 22 inches. They need to be 20 inches for you to legally keep them. They have an extremely white meat, and they're also a very curious fish. Like, even if they're out in the open and you see one of them, they won't really run away from you. After putting the grouper in the cooler, I locked in on this sheep's head. Usually sheep's head are pretty smart. Like, they're running away from you pretty quickly once they get their eye on you. So every time I was sneaking up on this thing, I made sure to really cheat the corner and make sure that he wasn't able to see me fully. Finally though, he holed up, and this is kind of like a death sentence for any fish. If he's just in a hole and I have to shoot point blank, it's really good news.
Right?
We're in an area right now that is very shallow. It's only about 8 feet deep, so there are a lot of snappers, but with that being said, it's a pretty remote location, so it was very plentiful. This is a pretty good sized hogfish, and I was aiming at it, but I couldn't really tell if it was the legal size, and on top of that, we already had a nice hogfish. I still followed him, and this is a good example of when they think they're camouflaged. Hogfish have this funny behavior where they'll kind of just change patterns on the drop of a dime, and you could see that that's what he did right there. Just because we're shallow doesn't mean that there's a lack of sharks. This nurse shark came like an inch from my face at one point. I turned my camera on late, but he scared the crap out of me. I went to go tell my buddy about the shark in the area, and when we came back to the chum cage, there was another red grouper right below it. And this is what I mean by they're not the smartest fish. Like, I'm literally an inch away from this thing, and usually any fish would run in this situation, but this guy is just totally taking the bait. No, that's not even an analogy. That's just legit. We weren't really sure he was the legal size, so we came up with a good strategy.
What if we catch him with our hands and then measure him and then release him if he's small?
I started trying to get really close to this red grouper, and it's kind of, you know, you almost feel bad for him at one point because you're like, damn, you know, why do you gotta be so dumb, you know? At least make it so that it's a little bit of a hunt, but this guy was really just hanging so close, and he was so curious. I was trying to catch him with our hands because I don't want to just spear a fish and then it be undersized. I usually don't take a shot unless I know a fish is definitely legal. It wasn't letting me get my hands on him though, and I didn't want to stress it out, so I kept swimming and came across this stingray that was completely buried. Legally, I am allowed to harvest this thing. Like, I can shoot it and eat it, so leave a comment if you want me to catch a large stingray in one of my next videos. Usually they're hiding from a lot of the sharks in the area, and in the distance I saw a shark chasing after it, so I was like, oh gosh, I hope I didn't just blow his cover. We pulled so many good fish off of that area that we wanted to leave it be. You never want to take too many fish from one area because it can make it so that it's not a honey hole in the future, and you kind of just want to treat your environments right. The next spot we pulled up on was another shipwreck, and these are a bunch of nurse sharks cuddling, and and not only are there nurse sharks in there, but there's a giant Goliath grouper in there with them. It's kind of a funny behavior nurse sharks have with Goliath groupers. They're always so calm, and they always cuddle together. I've noticed that. The nurse sharks are always so sweet. They're like little puppy dogs. In the same area, there were a bunch of angelfish, and this is another fish that's extremely curious, or for lack of a better word, dumb. Doesn't have the best survival skills. They're lucky they're protected. In Florida, anything that's pretty is pretty much not allowed to be shot, oddly enough. Pretty privilege really is a thing here. There was a school of jack that were swimming by every once in a while, and I don't want to be haphazard and just take a shot. Sometimes they get spooked really easily, so I was waiting for them to calm down. As I was waiting, I looked down and there was a giant Goliath grouper, and this is like Big Papa right here. Goliath groupers are extremely territorial, so anytime you get close to them, they start to bark at you really loud. Whenever they bark, it literally will shake your insides. It's the most bizarre feeling ever. And this guy was getting pissed. He just wanted me out of his space, and it's not like I was invading his space. I was hunting in the area just like he was. Gotta share the ocean, bud. He wasn't happy about it though. Then eventually I ran into his little brother. This is a little tiny Goliath grouper. They're kind of just chilling, and look, he's cuddling with a nurse shark. Even more evidence that they're best friends. Finally, the jack started to trust me a little bit, and as they started to trust me, I took aim and got one of the bigger ones in the school. At first, it seemed like he was gonna take my arrow, but the weight of the arrow finally got to him, and he wasn't able to stay up for very long. They always wind up talking to you also. This is what they sound like. This is the last spot we went to, and probably my best shot of the entire video. If you stayed this long, make sure you like and leave a comment. It helps the video more than you know. I was about 30 feet deep on a shipwreck, and these jack came a little bit too close to me. I took aim at the biggest one in the school, and I absolutely stoned it. Look, you see how it just stopped swimming altogether? That's what I call a perfect stone shot. I went to the top, made sure that there were no sharks in the area. I'm happy to say that in this video, we got like 3 weeks worth of food.